This is the fly I've chosen to show off the Indian crow sub I made in my last video. I'll link to that one below. It's called the Red Sandy, and it's from Pryce Tannatt's How to Dress Salmon Flies. This one is kind of a cross between a Silver Doctor and a Jock Scott. I think the best way to think of it. Only it might be just a little bit harder than either one of those. So it was a challenge, to say the least. And I did this one over 3 days, and I had a lot of fun doing this. I've tied in the tag and tail already, and getting ready to put on the first Indian crow sub. I did a lot of tweaking on the stem of this. I made that look very easy, but there was quite a bit of work you didn't see off camera. This tail, by the way, is doubled. This is a 7/0 hook. It's a really big fly here. And I decided to double the tail on this one. I rarely do that, but I think it's going to work. Always check everything from the top. Looks good. This is a Chatterer sub. It's actually Kingfisher. Again, a lot of tweaking done on the stem ahead of time, getting it prepped. I tied that in just a little bit short there. I want this to go quite a ways up the Indian crow. It's a veiling, but I don't want to obscure the Indian crow feather completely that I worked so hard dyeing up. You can use considerable wraps here to secure everything, because the butt's going to cover it all. So with full dress flies, you have to know when to do a lot of turns and when not. As long as you've got something to cover it after the fact, you can use as many turns as you want. The more secure you can make things around the tail, the better. Things will tend to really move. These little veiling feathers will move around quite a bit. This is red Berlin wool that I've just dubbed on the thread. Making a butt out of it. My goal on when I make a butt, a lot of guys shoot for different things. I kind of want it to look as if it's an ostrich hurl butt, almost rectangular rather than oval shaped. But that's just my own preference. This is medium silver tinsel. The recipe calls for fine, but this is such a big fly. I wanted to be able to see the ribs, so I used medium. And this is large metal flat silver tinsel. And I prepped it by cutting it into kind of a point at the end. for less bulk. Now, right now, I'm trying to figure out where I want to station the thread to tie in my palmered hackle for the body, which follows the second turn of ribbing. So I'm trying to determine where that's going to be. And I'm close, but I need to go forward with it just maybe a couple of turns. And we'll tie in the hackle there. I made some new wax recently, and it's Marvin Nolte's 721C wax, and I'm using it constantly. You can't see, I don't always do the waxing on camera, but I am putting wax on all the time throughout this process. Certainly between every feather I'm attaching, I'm waxing. And this latest batch of wax really turned out beautifully. Now here, I forgot to hit record, and I've done this about 3 times now at this very stage. But bottom line, what I did was I wrapped the flat tinsel, then I wrapped the oval tinsel ribbing, and then the last thing I did was wrap the hackle feather. And I think, wrapping that hackle feather it's nervous time, because if you break the stem, you've got to start over. And I think I forget to hit record there because I'm so eaten up by the hackle feather. Right now, I'm smoothing everything down, and I'm using a little spit here to get it to stay down, and it just doesn't want to cooperate. We're getting there with it. I typically do this for a while and then wind up taking tweezers and getting any of the really tough fibers, the ones that just don't want to lay down, and plucking them out. I want the top of this clean. The underwing on this is white-tipped turkey, and it's a little fragile, and these things will mess it up for sure. All right, we've beaten that to death. Now I'm switching over to black thread because everything from here on is dark. This GSP really needs to be held under tension. That was the thread I was using previously, was 50 denier GSP. Really needs to be held under a lot of tension when you cut it. Very difficult to cut that stuff. It's tough. Here's my white tip turkey slips. A left and a right. The left is makes up the near underwing. And I will spend a lot of time on this underwing. If the underwing's not perfect, you have very little chance when you go to mount the big wing. So if there's anything you want to spend time on, it's this. And I'll spend a lot of time here, as you'll see. But it is time well spent. White-tipped turkey is very difficult to find these days. Good white-tipped turkey, certainly. The problem with most of it is the tips are too wide. They're, an inch long. And, you can still tie a fly with it. It's all right, but ideally you want just a little bit of white showing on the tips. I think this is my last good pair. I was kind of sweating it here. It was make these work or forget it. My stash of materials is dwindling. Hooks are tough to come by. That's why this is a 7/0 fly. I rarely tie anything this big. But I just don't have 5/0 hooks. Times are tough. It's always something. There's always a shortage of something. You really need, in this game, you really need to strike while the iron's hot. If there's some white-tipped turkey available, you need to buy all you can afford. And in my case, that's not a lot ever. So, you just make do with what you have as best you can. Really taking my time cutting these butts. Holding the turkey the whole time. I don't want to mess this underwing up. I take a lot of breaks with these flies. I would say I take some kind of a break between every stage, although that's not a rule. But the minute you feel a little bit of tension creeping in, stop. Do something else for a little bit and then come back to it. And the tension will tend to build as you proceed with the fly, especially if it's going well. All right, now I'm tying in the throat, which is, in this case, a guinea feather that's been dyed blue-gray. It's a J substitute. I don't like dyeing these royal blue. You see a lot of subs with royal blue. I don't like that. A J feather is not royal blue. And you want to find a guinea feather with as fine a stem as possible. And I've got a good one here. It's got a very fine stem. Unfortunately, that makes tying it in dicey and wrapping it dicey because it can break. But it'll cut down bulk at the head. If you can get a guinea skin, that gives you lots of options. They're not incredibly expensive. They're less expensive than you might think. Folding guinea's always a treat. I probably should have done it ahead of time, but I don't know. I don't have real good success either way. I think the stem breaks here, right there. Fortunately, I was kind of holding the fibers so I could grab it again with the hackle pliers. I wanted to use the whole feather. I've got a very little bit of stem left here. I've got to try to trap. It's never easy. When you get in a tough situation like this, it really helps to slow down. And that worked. Now I want to bring these down into a beard, and they don't want to cooperate at all. I'll bring out the dental tool. This tool's great for this sort of thing because it's rounded everywhere. So it's not like trying to do this with your scissors or something where you might cut something. You can separate things out nicely with this. You could use a bodkin too. Going to bind this down a bit. Got one sticking up there. I know about it. Going to make a decision whether to pluck it or maybe I can pull it down. Looks like it'll come down. All right, that'll work. Little piece came unmarried there. You'll do a lot of damage as you work on one stage. You'll screw up previous stages. Don't panic. Just go back, and 9 times out of 10 you can fix it. There, I finally got it off camera. Guinea has a propensity to sort of stick together. That's why I'm doing this. Trying to broaden it out, get the fibers separated. Right here, I'm doing a whip finish because I've got other flies I'm working on. I'm working on a fly box for a friend, and I've got other flies I need to tie, so I need to get this off the vise. I used to have 2 vices. Boy, those were the good old days. But I'm down to 1 again. We're starting day 2 here. And I'm going to put the wing on. I've married it this morning. It's Fundamentally, this wing is 3 sections. It's got red turkey, yellow turkey, and 2 kinds of bustard, florican and Cory. Oh yeah, there's also a golden pheasant tail sub in each section. So each section is made up of 2 strands each of 5 materials. So each section is 10 strands wide, 3 sections, 30 strands, and then there is a peacock sub at the very bottom of the fly. That's maybe another 3 or 4 strands. So it's a big wing, but it's a big fly. Go big or go home. The reason I had to use subs for golden pheasant tail and peacock wing are those fibers just aren't long enough for a 7/0 fly. And John McLean of feathersmc.com makes up some feathers from Argus pheasant, I believe, some subs that are very useful in these situations if you want to tie big. Once again, spending a lot of time getting this wing just right. The mounting appears to have gone fairly well. And now I'm working, tweaking. I always seem to get a little bit of a, its thread torque takes the leading edge of the wing and pushes it away. And I'll spend some time getting that straightened out. I'm humping it here to broaden it. I want the tail to curve upwards a little bit towards the tail. I want it to curve upwards. Still not quite exactly straight. And the tail has gotten out of whack as well. We can fix both these things. When in doubt, wrench it. You've got to be aggressive. You don't want to screw up your wing, I know, but you really have to be forceful. If I've learned anything doing these flies, it's that. Just do whatever it takes to make it right. Now, my plan is to mount the wood duck teal pair kind of low, but at the tie-in point, I want to keep it high. That, for whatever reason, seems to work out the best for me. So you see how high I'm tying this in at the tie-in point. And I've got a lot of materials going up here at the head on this fly. This is what makes it as difficult as it is. So I'm tying each one in with just 2 turns. Rumor has it you can do it with just 1 turn. I don't know. I do 2. I want them to stay put, and I'm waxing like crazy. When I'm up around the head, the wax is critical. These cheek feathers, this is more Indian crow sub. The cheeks, when they're prepped, rather than stripping the stem, cut along the stem very close as you can get. And that gives the thread something to grip onto. And that is right out of Pryce Tannatt's book, which, by the way, I think is the best full dress fly instruction there is. That's how Megan Boyd learned to tie full dress flies. She only had that book, and it was all she needed. And we're putting it, again, this is a kingfisher. It's a chatterer sub, small kingfisher feather. I've got a chatterer sub that I make, again, with ringneck pheasant feathers, but the subs are just a little too big for this application. They work fine if your cheeks are just chatterer. All right, that'll work. Always spend a lot of time primping and fixing and messing with it. Whatever you do. All right, this is a tough stage here. These are peacock sword feathers, just 3 in this case. Right now I'm crimping them. I've pulled them off the feather in such a way that they're still aligned and have the same curvature that they did on the feather. And right there, you saw what I did with my thumb, I hope. On the inside, I added some curvature to the front part of this. And the idea here is when these are tied in, you want them to go right along the top of the wing. Ron Alcott used to put liquid wax along the top of the wing so that these would kind of stick to it. But don't do that. Everything else will stick to them too. And it'll really mess up your mallard roof and your topping. I have not had good luck doing that. Don't do anything, just work with it until it works for you. I've taken the easy way out with this mallard roof using a folded section of mallard, bronze mallard. Something's got to be easy on this fly. What I did with these slips is I kind of rolled them on from the far side. And that worked fairly well. I like that idea. I have a problem when I do this technique of not getting enough bronze mallard on the far side of the hook. So I started there and rolled it towards myself this time. And I think it's going to work. Always waxing. This is the topping. I put a turn on or two and then I adjust it from there typically. Now here I'm using thread torque to my advantage. I wanted the stem to go away from me a bit, so I just took a couple of hard cranks with the thread. trying to move that away from me, which will move the tail section closer to me. On the one hand, you're always fighting thread torque, but on the other hand, you can use it to your advantage. It's a double-edged sword. You got to take the bad with the good, the yin with the yang. All right, I'm going to tie the horns in. They're supposed to be red, blue, and macaw. And I have some red, blue macaw, but it's too small. So I'm using just red, which technically, if you look at the feather, there's a little bit of blue there too. So this one's hard to adjust because it's all red, and you can't use my technique for figuring out which of the three surfaces you need to tie in. So you mess with it and twirl it around and play with it. You want this feather to curve away from you after it's tied in. And the higher you can get this on the head, the better, I think. At least that's what works for me. Most guys seem to have a lot easier time with horns than I do. And see how that macaw feather curves inward at the tail? That's what I want. And I want the far one to curve the opposite direction. So here I'm trying to figure out just how to tie this in. Whatever I was doing there wasn't going to work. All right, the near one needs to be made a little bit shorter, and I think we'll be there. Make sure you grab the right feather here, the right stem. If you don't, you'll screw something else up. I've never done that. I'm going to push this up a little higher. Very close to perfect here. I can make that work. All right, at this point I've trimmed everything off, and I took, 20 minutes doing that. That's the number one way to screw up everything you've already done, is cutting those butts. So do it just a little bit at a time and take your time. I'm switching to red thread here so that I'll have a red base over which to dub. The head is red wool, and I don't want any black showing through, so I'm just going to try to get some red going ahead of time. This wax is really working well, and I will have a video soon on how to make it. It's very easy. And I think, indispensable for these flies. Unless you want to crazy glue every stage. And there are tires that do that. A lot of things I don't like about that personally, but that's just me. Here I'm going to glue the head up before wrapping my dubbing. Up it. And Pryce Tannatt recommends doing that in his book. It's the one time where using glue is not frowned upon by the old traditional tires. Not completely happy. Hopefully I can get this before the glue dries. Try one more time. I don't have quite enough dubbing. You have to be careful here that you don't mash down your topping and your wing if you do it this way. Going up works quite a bit better than wrapping down. Wrapping down, you run the risk of a thread avalanche. And when that happens, everything goes. I think I'd rather be in a real avalanche than have a thread avalanche. Maybe not. All right, this will work. Let's see if I can get a whip finish on here. Cut the thread. And we'll spruce everything up and take some pictures. Not bad, all things considered. That peacock sword went on like a dream. That almost never happens. And I'm happy with it. And soon I'll have the wax video up, and you can try that out. Give this one a shot if you really want a challenge. It's a blast.